Okay?
Yes, please.
Well, good morning, everyone. We did it. Europe is strong. Europe is united. Nous l'avons fait. L'Europe est solide.
So, Europe is strong and has come together.
On the recovery package and the European budget, these were, of course, difficult negotiations in very difficult times for all Europeans. A marathon which ended in success for all 27 member states, but especially for the people. This is a good deal, this is a strong deal, and most importantly, this is the right deal for Europe right now. I would like to thank all the leaders and the President of the Commission and their teams for their hard work. We showed collective responsibility and solidarity, and we show also our belief in our common future. And this agreement sends a concrete signal that Europe is a force for action. We negotiated about money, but of course, it's about a lot more than money. It's about workers and families, their jobs, their health, and their well-being. I believe this agreement will be seen as a pivotal moment in Europe's journey, but it will also launch us into the future. In fact, it's the first time in European history that our budget will be clearly linked to our climate objectives. The first time that the respect for rule of law is a decisive criteria for budget spending, and the first time that you are jointly reinforcing our economies against a crisis. Nous avons décidé de soutenir.
We've decided to support a budget for the next 7 years for 1.7 billion, 750 billion euro to be mobilized for the recovery of the economy. Europe has come together again. Europe stood up to be counted when it needed to be. We have taken steps on own resources, which will be a boost for European projects in the future. We have identified those topics we want to work on with clear timetables, and we decided that governance and the rule of law, shared and common value, had to be there, and they were, including in these decisions that we're announcing today. I think you can see that we've shown that the magic of the European project continues to work, because even when one thinks it is no longer possible, there is always that ability to go forward, thanks to respect, to cooperation, and a desire to work together, to, with mutual respect, get past obstacles and to face the future together. That's the magic of the European project. There are differences of views, there are different opinions, there are different approaches, but we've sent a strong signal to Europe, to Europeans, and to the rest of the world that we share values, that the Union is a union of values and of citizens, and that it can answer with strength and in a robust manner when needed. We send a signal of faith in the future, of confidence, which is needed. The world and Europe have been hit by an unprecedented crisis. I think 600,000 dead was the last figures I saw a few hours ago. This crisis continues and will continue to affect people, families, women, children. As political leaders, we have responsibilities. We have a democratic mandate, which we all share, and we have to answer that challenge by showing that we're able to deal with these through concrete, real results and through decisions, concrete decisions, not virtual decisions. A decision which will have an impact, it must have an impact, a positive impact, so that we can move towards the future and meet our challenges. Thank you.
Madam President.
Merci beaucoup, mesdames et messieurs. Je voudrais tout d'abord remercier Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'd like to start by thanking the President of the Council, Charles Michel, for his really hard work and his tremendous perseverance, because the success of this European Council is his success as well. I'd like to thank Angela Merkel for her exceptional guidance. We spent 4 long days and nights of negotiation, more than 90 hours, but it was worth it. This agreement is a signal that Europe is able to act. Now in German, after all, people often accuse Europe as being too little too late, whereas here we're demonstrating that the opposite is the case. At the end of April, the European Council gave us the mandate of designing a recovery package, and today, only 2 months later, Next Generation Europe is up and running, and it has the agreement of the European Council. And in the history of the European Union, that is an absolute record for a new budgetary instrument. And Next Generation Europe is very extensive, more than 1.8 trillion euros, and that's more than 5% of the GDP of the EU 27. Europe still has the courage and the imagination to think big. And in so doing, we are fully aware that this is a historic moment in Europe. We are currently in one of the most difficult economic and health crises, but nonetheless, Europe is managing, having worked really hard to tackle this crisis in a really effective way. And this will benefit the EU budget, and it will link solidarity with responsibility. Solidarity because all 27 countries together bear and support Next Generation EU, and responsibility because Next Generation EU doesn't just point the way out of the crisis, but also it serves as the very foundation of a modern and sustainable Europe.
2 more points. We have now the new own resources tightly linked to the repayment. This is a big step forward with a clear timetable. Member States will benefit as they will contribute less to repay the investments, and the new own resources will strengthen the European Union also in the long term. I'm glad that we managed to safeguard this achievement during the whole negotiations. And Europe's recovery will be green. The new budget will power the European Green Deal. It will accelerate the digitalization of Europe's economy. Thanks to Next Generation EU, national reforms will be boosted. We invest in Europe's future. And finally, unlike in previous crises, this time member states have not opted for an intergovernmental agreement, but they have entrusted the European Commission of Europe's recovery. We will together manage a total of 1.8 trillion euro. The bulk of the money will be channeled through the programs in which the European Parliament is involved. Next Generation EU comes with a great responsibility, and we are determined to bring about reforms and investment in Europe. Nevertheless, I must also mention a difficult point. In their search for a compromise, leaders have made far-reaching adjustments into the new MFF and Next Generation EU, for example, in health, migration, external action, InvestEU. They have not taken up the solvency instrument. This is regrettable. It decreases the innovative part of the budget, even if more than 50% of the overall budget, MFF and Next Generation EU, will support modern policies. And so finally, to conclude, Europe as a whole has now a big chance to come out stronger from the crisis. Today we've taken a historic step we can be all proud of. But another important step remains ahead of us. First and foremost, we now have to work with the European Parliament to secure agreement. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but tonight is a big step forward towards recovery. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. We'll be taking a couple of questions. And first on is David Carretta. David.
Merci, David Carretta, Radio Radicale.
Thank you, David Carretta, Radio Radicale. So it was mission impossible. You've pulled it off. Congratulations. Having said that, I have a couple of questions, if I may. First of all, on the rule of law. There's a compromise which seems to be at a very low level if you look at the initial proposals the Commission and you yourself had. Did you sacrifice the rule of law at the altar of compromise? And secondly, for President von der Leyen, with so little money, will you be able to carry through your products? 100 billion less in the recovery plan and through the European budget. Which generation, if any, is going to get this? Well, I'll try to cover both points, says President Michel, to start with. On the rule of law, we are fully determined, and this is the first time in the history of Europe that there is this link between governance and mobilization of funds and the rule of law and mobilization of funds. We've shown that the Council works on a qualified majority. It's very early in the morning. When you've had more time to read the details, you'll see how ambitious this compromise is. Around the table, people spoke frankly, looked at each other in the eyes, and tackled this issue to progress our common values, move them forward, move governance forward. I reaffirm this was ambitious, this was an ambitious decision. And then on the amounts, can I also say that this is the first time this European project we've negotiated such a big financial package. People are giving the impression that there aren't many resources. No, there's 1.74 trillion and then 750 billion in the recovery, which together add up to something that is very substantial. We talk about our ambitions, but you have to look at what the MFF contains to deal with short, medium, and long-term strategic challenges. With this massive injection of boost, the 750 billion euros to help economic recovery, but also to help transform this European project. COVID-19 has hit us, but even before, the Commission, Parliament, and the Council had thought that it was time to relaunch and transform Europe with climate change at the heart of it, and 30% of the MFF and the Recovery Fund have to be tied to these climate ambitions. And we've followed up on what we intended to do before this all started. And I say with great conviction that these decisions we've taken today will transform in a long-term way, the face of Europe.
To the questions, the text that has been agreed on the rule of law has improved. It's a very clear, in the document, a very clear commitment to the rule of law and a very clear commitment to the protection of the financial interests of the Union. And this is linked, against this background, to the fact that the Commission has proposed an instrument under which, in case of breaches, measures will be adopted. So there's a very clear link, a reference. The adopting or the voting will be by qualified majority voting. And finally, we will also introduce instruments to strengthen the controls of the EU funds. So there is more clarity, there is more distinction in the text, and a very clear reference, which was important not only to the rule of law, but also to the protection of the financial interests of the Union. And what the overall package is concerned, and your question on the priorities for the European Union, it is an unprecedented size and scope of package that we have. 1.8 trillion. And the importance here is that the whole next generation EU package of 750 billion is composed in a way that the national recovery plans will be aligned with the European priorities. That is the European Green Deal, that is the digitization, and that is resilience, transmitted through the country-specific recommendations. So we have a very strong tool now that we can work together with the member states on not only the recovery, but at the same time, through the investment, leap forward into a more sustainable, a greener and more digitized future we want to build with a modern single market. So this is a unique opportunity to modernize the European Union.
Thank you. Next question is for David Hersenhorn from Politico.
Thank you very much, Berend. Good morning, President. President Michel, I wonder if you could address the concern that President von der Leyen just raised, calling it regrettable that leaders had to cut some of the most innovative parts of the MFF. Also that you had to persist in the rebates, which some people feel are sort of a budget gimmick in getting agreement here. And if there was a moment in this for you, President Michel, when throughout this summit, what was the key moment when you had a deal? And for President von der Leyen, a lot of this package obviously will be in national plans. The grants was the issue of disagreement. To your mind, how do you envision member states best using these grants in concrete ways? Obviously, it's not like rebuilding from an earthquake or from a war. It's a different type of recovery. In a concrete way, what do you envision the best national recovery plans might look like? Thank you.
There is a very strong political will around the table of the European Council to act in order to deliver, because we are convinced that climate change, that innovation, that the support for the circular economy, for example, it's key to develop a very strong program. And with this decision, the MFF and the Recovery Fund, we have the tools, we have the means in order to tackle those important challenges for the future. It's also important to observe that this package is huge if you compare to the size of the European GDP. Also important not to forget that the recovery strategy will also be developed at the national level. It means that as European Union, we send a very strong signal. We are solid, we are robust, and we are united. And more than ever, we need to be united, and we need to be strong in order to face this huge crisis.
So, to your question, concerning the part how I envisage to make sure that the investment goes in the right direction. The program is the Recovery and Resilience Facility is established in a way that is very clear. First of all, it's voluntary. So member states can choose to come forward with a national recovery plan, but it has to be aligned with the European semester and the country-specific recommendations. And the country-specific recommendations address the weaknesses or deficiencies in member states that should be improved, where things should be reformed. And they were always very interesting, but did not always have the necessary effect in the member states, because it was up to them to implement them or not. Now, this instrument has a new punch, because the European semester is now connected to an enormous amount of grants or potentially loans. So there's way more punch behind the country-specific recommendations and the necessity to respect the principles of the European Green Deal and of the digitization, as I said, the priorities of the European Union. We can make sure that this will be implemented in a proper way, because there will be milestones where you have a look whether the milestones have been reached, and then the necessary investment, the payments will be dispersed. So there's a very clear plan to have both two goals. On the one hand, the recovery of the member state, but on the other hand, to make sure that it's at the same time a modernization of the member states.
Thank you. Next question is for Sam Fleming from the Financial Times. Sam.
Yes, good morning. Could I follow up on the question on, please, on rebates? Clearly, the rebates were not only maintained from previous drafts, but they were actually increased. Were the frugal states in these discussions effectively trading their support for higher grants in exchange for higher rebates? Were you disappointed that that was the outcome that you saw, given the Commission has previously been recommending that rebates be phased out? And do you think rebates now, these high rebates, are basically here to stay? Thank you.
We took a decision today for the next MFF and for the recovery fund. In the framework of this decision, we took also some decisions related to the rebates. We face a big crisis. I repeat again, and I think that what's important is the fact that we find the way in order to take a very strong decision. And indeed, the rebate is not a surprise. When I expressed the idea a few weeks ago that we would need to tackle different building blocks, I expressed the idea that the rebate would be part of the global package, of the global decision. You know, at the level of the European Council, it's very difficult. We need to decide by unanimity. And that's why it's important to show respect for each other. That's why it's important also to be able at the same time to take strong and courageous decisions. And that's what we did today. And I remember only a few hours ago maybe, and certainly the last days, there was this global impression that it would be impossible mission, but we did it. And it's very important. We were able to take the decision. We are united, and we sent the message, Europe is strong.
Next question is for Lily Bayer, please. Lily?
Thank you very much. Question, which is for both presidents. Today is not really the end of the saga, because of course you still need to convince the European Parliament and national parliaments to sign off on this deal. So I was wondering if you could both maybe talk a little bit about how you plan to convince legislators to sign off, especially because we're already seeing some members of the European Parliament raising concerns about certain elements of your package. Thank you.
We show respect for the important role of the European Parliament. And as you know, we had many consultations, many contacts with the European Parliament the last weeks, the last months. And of course, we will have the occasion to maintain the discussions with the members of the European Parliament. And it's key for the European democratic process, of course. And at the same time, you are right, we need also to show respect for the responsibility of the national parliaments. I mean, today, there is a strong signal, there is a strong message. Why? Because 27 heads of states and heads of governments, they took the decision to act together. And they are responsible before their own national parliaments. I know that probably, because it's the democratic process, it will be difficult. It will mean that we will need to explain what are the arguments, what are the reasons for our decision. We are transparent. It's also very essential for this democratic process. And I'm really convinced that with political will, with political courage, with a constant dialogue, it will be possible to implement what we have decided today.
Well, indeed, from tomorrow on, work will continue. The text of the document has to be transformed into a legal text that then will immediately go to the Parliament, and we will start working with that legal text with the Parliament to find agreement. There are two pieces that are of utmost importance. On one hand, there is the own resources decision, on which an opinion of the European Parliament is necessary in order then to have the ratification in the national parliaments. And on the other side, on the other hand, there is the work with the MFF that has to be approved by adopted by the European Parliament. I have triggered already once the Article 324. That is, in this case, the presidency, the President of the European Parliament and the President of the Commission to work together in order to work on a budgetary matter. So I'm convinced that such meetings will be necessary also now after we've found the agreement in the European Council. So you can see by my words there's a lot of work ahead of us, but it is for a very important purpose. It concerns not only the future of Europe, but it's also badly needed.
Thank you. I have a question from Pierre-Emmanuel Briquet. And I'm going to ask the question addressed to the President of the European Council in French. Peux-tu...
So, can you ask, what is the feeling that the European Council President had at the end of these 5 days, and what is his view of the forthcoming negotiations with the European Parliament? The President, yes, well, when you have negotiations which are as intense as these, obviously they trigger emotions on the part of all participants. They release adrenaline. Sometimes you get the feeling that it's not going to work. Sometimes you feel that you might need to give up, but sometimes you feel you just have to push your sleeves up and push ahead. And then you feel calm, moderation. But I think the most important lesson this morning at 6:16, just a few minutes after what I believe is a real historic agreement for Europe had been reached, the real feeling is keep a cool head, because obviously, as Ursula said, we are going to continue to work to implement this in order to make it a reality, so that it has a real impact on all of Europe's citizens, and so that we can try to ensure that it is useful in terms of the effect that it has on people's daily lives in compliance with European values. And so there's another reason why this decision was so important as well, because for 4 months now, since the crisis began, it hasn't been possible for us to meet physically in the same place. We just haven't been able to come together, and it was the first physical meeting that we've had for 4 months. And given such a strong, important and ambitious decision as that bodes well, I believe, that we had our first physical meeting, because tomorrow and after that we'll face other challenges. Europe's leaders will face other challenges, and so we really showed our ability to meet together and come together today, and I shall spare no efforts in continuing to work hard in order to ensure that this strong signal can be put into effect tomorrow and after that, when we come to tackle the other very difficult issues that lie ahead of Europe and its institutions. Yes, well, you have a whole plethora of feelings over these 4 days and almost 100 hours of negotiations, often bordering on failure. But once again, I would like to pay tribute to Charles and congratulate you on pulling this off, pulling together this huge piece of work and managing to reach agreement. And it's sometimes breathtaking to see at a historic time such as this that we've actually done it. We now have the package. We've set a huge milestone shoring up the future of the European Union. And that's really something quite extraordinary, and I don't think either of us will ever forget it. Thank you.
This concludes our press conference.
Voilà.
and all necessary documents will be provided on our website. Thank you at this early hour.
Tu as raison.